Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, we're going to talk about slow weight loss and why it's a good goal. The weight loss industry doesn't tend to market weight loss, successful weight loss, as a slow process that takes a lot of work, that takes a lot of patience, and that's about, sustainable lifestyle change. Instead, it's all about drastic changes and fast results and incredible transformations. And in hindsight, I realize this was a big problem. This is why I think I had such a hard time with my weight historically, because I always thought of my weight that it was like, the problem is that I just have this extra chunk of weight that I'm carrying around, and I need to get rid of that chunk of weight. So whatever helps me to do that the fastest, that's what I'm going to do. Once the excess weight is gone, I never have to think about it anymore, and I'm done. But the problem is that was ignoring the reasons why I got overweight. It was ignoring those root issues I had. I was overeating. I was emotionally eating. I was distractedly eating. And I was just completely unaware that I had these bad behaviors that needed to change with food. And, I would hear from time to time these people talk about, oh, well, the way I lost the weight was lifestyle change and just, breaking the bad habits. And I would just roll my eyes. I would think that's ridiculous because to my mind, I had no bad habits. I just thought I eat less than most people, and yet I've gained this weight. So what do I do to fix that problem? And so in 2015, I was still definitely in that mindset. Even though I had decided I never want to go on another diet again, I was definitely in the mindset of this weight loss thing needs to be fast, and it's got to be, 5 pounds a week or I'm failing. And so in 2015, it didn't matter. If I lost a pound that week, it was that's not good enough. I've got to figure out something that's faster. So what I would usually do would be I would stop whatever it was I was doing and then take a couple of days to figure out a new plan, right? And so by the end of that year, even though I was working out really, really hard in the gym, I had lost a net of 15 pounds. I had gotten down I think 20 pounds, but then I started to regain the weight. At the end of that year, it was so frustrating. And I realized that when I really started to look back at my numbers and the notes I had been taking, I realized, on those weeks where I was actually being consistent with something, I was losing about a pound a week. And if I had just stuck with those plans, whatever they were, if I had just stuck with something, I probably would have lost a pound a week and I'd be down 50 right now instead of 15. So I changed my mindset in 2016. I said, okay, I'm going to have to be okay with slow weight loss. I have to be okay with it. And as it turns out, that's one of the best things that has ever happened to me, is that I slowed down. I finally slowed down. And when I slowed down, that's when I started to change those habits. I started to even be aware of them. The fact that I was even emotionally eating a lot, or that I had a really bad habit of overeating. Those were things that came to me because I started to take my time with it. And habit change is really slow. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to retrain your brain to say, okay, I'm in the habit of overeating, so I got to stop when I'm full. And that takes a lot of practice. And it, again, it's something I'm still working on. None of the habits I think I have 100% in the bag, never have to deal with that anymore. I think because, when I think about it from one perspective, I had 30 years worth of ingrained habit that I'm trying to reverse. And at this point, I'm 6 years into this, but that's still, I've got 5 times as much time with the bad habits as I do with the good. So slow weight loss is good. But my fear is when you hear me say, shoot for a pound a week, that you're going to hear every week, you need to be losing at least 1 pound or you're failing, because that's not how it happened for me at all. And so I'm going to take you through the beginning stage of my being on a plan. In 2016, in January, that's when I started my plan. And so I'm going to take you through week by week, what did my weight look like on Friday? And now I'm using just the straight up single day weight. I'm not talking about my 7-day average, because I feel like probably most people out there are just doing their single day weights, paying attention to those. But I prefer the 7-day average because it helps to smooth this out a little bit, although it doesn't get rid of all the fluctuations. So let's go through those numbers. So on this first Friday, I weighed 202.4. The next Friday, I weighed 200.8, which I thought was, pretty good. It's like, okay, that's like over 1.5 pounds. Good stuff, right? But then the next week, my weight, now keep in mind, I was being consistent, was 201. So I gained 0.2 pounds. Now that's really frustrating. I want to really emphasize this, that it's very, very, very frustrating if you have been consistent with a plan. I mean, you're doing everything right, and the weight goes up a little bit. And like in hindsight, I'm thinking, well, 0.2 pounds, that's like really nothing. But, when you really think about being consistent for 7 days in a row and ending up with a gain, that can feel really bad. But, the difference this go around was I told myself, I'm trying this plan for at least 6 weeks. Like, I'm committed to doing it no matter what. And the only out I gave myself was if I gained 10 pounds, I would quit. But so I said, I'm going to stick with it. Now, so the next week stuck with it, and my weight was 197.6. Now that was great. That was like, that was 3.5 pounds. And so really good stuff, right? That's one of those weeks like, all right, yeah, it feels good. The next week after that, though, my weight was 198.2. So I gained 0.5 pound. Now, keep in mind, I'm being consistent. Now, I don't have in-depth notes on just how consistent I was, but I was consistent. I was really trying hard. But I kept saying, okay, I'm just going to stick with this and see, because in the moment you're thinking, did the plan stop working? Should I stick with this? What should I do? But I thought, I'm just going to keep going with this. So the next week, my weight was 197.2. So I lost a little bit of weight. Lost 1 pound. The next week after that, it was 196.4. So that's another almost pound. This is 0.8 pounds. The next week after that, my weight was 194.2. So that was great. It was like that was like 2.2 pounds. The next week after that, it was 193.8. So that was a loss of 0.4 pounds, which, again, that can also feel a little bit frustrating, because you're thinking, well, but that other week I lost like 2 pounds. You kind of get addicted to that bigger loss, and you can start to expect a big loss every week. But in my experience, that's not how it works. The week after that, my weight went up to 194.4. Now, again, remember, I'm being consistent on this plan. So it can feel like, oh no, something stopped working or whatever. And then the next week after that, I stuck with it, and my weight was at 192. I hope that you can, by going through those numbers, you can really start to feel what it feels like on the actual journey. If you're just looking week to week like that, just always comparing that number to the week before, how it can feel, kind of difficult. Like, oh no, is this not working? Panic can kind of start to sit in, or at least doubt, like, I don't know, is this really working well? But over that 10-week period, I started out at 202.4 and I went down to 192. So that means that I lost a total of 10.4 pounds. But it's hard to see that if you're only looking week to week, because, 30% of the time, my weight was up from the previous week. So that's why I always emphasize, look back at 6 weeks of data. So in other words, the way I looked at it, when I would sit down with my spreadsheet, I would look at my 7-day average and I would say, okay, here's where I am today. Where was I 6 weeks ago? And then that would tell me a lot more than well, what was my weight yesterday, or what was my weight last week? 6 weeks is a good amount of time. It kind of gets rid of those hormonal fluctuations that can happen, and it just gives you a better picture. And weight loss really is like a heartbeat. If you look at my overall journey, it looks like a heartbeat, and it just goes up and down and up and down. But over time, the trend is downward, and that's what you should be looking for. But the thing is, again, this all takes time. It's a slow process, and it's not a straight down line. Now, all that being said, even if you kind of mentally say, okay, I'm going to be okay with slow weight loss, it's still going to be challenging, because for one thing, you're likely going to start to feel peer pressure from other people. I didn't really talk about my weight loss when I was actually losing weight. I kind of kept it to myself. So there weren't a lot of people trying to say, hey, you should try this, you should try that. It was mostly just like this. Somebody would be telling me about, oh, I'm losing weight. I'm doing this particular plan, and man, I lost 10 pounds the first week, and this week I lost 5, and and so it would be tempting in that moment to say, like I've been kind of struggling. I'm losing like a pound a week here, but I made the decision for myself. I'm gonna watch them. I'm going to observe them. Let's just see, can they sustain that rate of loss? That's the first thing. And then can they stick with the program? And then can they keep the weight off? So I mentally told myself, I'm going to check back in like 6 months from now and see how they're doing. And sure enough, basically, everyone that I can think of that was on, some sort of drastic kind of diet, they fell off that diet and regained the weight back. So if you do hear people bragging about their weight loss, just remind yourself that people they're a lot louder when they're having success, and they tend to clam up once they start having problems. Nobody really brags like that they're gaining weight or that they're having trouble sticking to their plan. Instead of worrying about what other people are doing, just focus on what works for you, what kind of plan you feel best on, and what is providing you with results, and what can you stick with for the long run. And it really can help you to really expand out your timeline and to think in terms of years. Whatever you're thinking it will take you right now, at least triple that timeline, maybe multiply it times 5. Even though the CDC has, they've studied this and they've found that generally speaking, 1 to 2 pounds a week is a good thing to shoot for with weight loss, because generally speaking, the people who keep it off for the long term, that's the rate they lost at. But I know, because I was one of these people, when you hear that, you might think, well, yeah, but I can be the exception, and I'm going to lose like 4 pounds a week and I can still keep it off. The problem again with that is that by having such an aggressive goal like that, you can end up doing drastic things that you just cannot stick with over time. So always be honest with yourself about what do you think you can really stick with for the long haul. Also, be sure to chart your progress somehow. Maybe it's some sort of app that you're using that's charting your weight and showing you how it's trending over time. You can certainly download the weight tracking spreadsheet I have available on my website, 6milestosupper.com/freebies. You can get one there, or, you can just do it on an actual graph, that you print out, and you can just track what your weight is doing. And pay attention to the progress you're making over time. Remember, this is a slow process. It's going to be slower than you want it to be, quite frankly. And so when you're looking at what your numbers are doing on the scale, be sure to look 6 weeks back. So be tracking your weight consistently every day, jot down that number or put it in an app, somehow log that number. And then that way you can look over time and see what's happening with your weight. And that's especially helpful when you're trying to figure out, is this plan that you figured out for yourself working or is it not? 6 weeks of data, 6 weeks of consistency plus 6 weeks of data means you can really make an informed decision on, does something need to change with your plan, or are you good to go? So I hope you found this episode helpful. Slow weight loss is really good, but it's mentally very difficult, I think, to accept. And remember, slow weight loss is so helpful and so important because it gets you to change your habits, and you're focusing on things that you can really stick with over time, as opposed to making drastic changes that maybe you can live with in the short term, but really can't carry out over the long term, which will, of course, lead to weight regain, which none of us want. So thank you for joining me in this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Frustrating obstacles appear in every weight loss journey. Plateaus, overeating, slow weight loss, emotional eating, and weight gain are a few of the common roadblocks that can cause you to quit before you hit your goal weight. The good news is, all these obstacles can be overcome. Each chapter in my book, Overcoming Weight Loss Obstacles: How to Keep Going When Things Get Difficult, will mentally prepare you for the challenges you are likely to face and will give you tips on how to overcome each one. It will help you to focus on the why behind losing weight and on the big picture, so that you can continue to make progress in a sustainable way. It's available as a paperback, ebook, or audiobook on Amazon and at other fine retailers. The link is in the show notes.